Translate this and you'll earn my paycheck, you useless waste of space. The millionaire scoffed, his voice dripping with saccharine contempt, a perfectly manicured hand gesturing dismissively at the complex legal document spread across the gleaming mahogany table. Mrs. Anya Sharma, clad in the crisp, starched uniform of a domestic worker, stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the ornate grandfather clock in the opulent hallway. The polished gold pendulum swung with an almost hypnotic rhythm, each tick a tiny hammer blow against the tension in the room. Her hands, usually busy with the endless tasks of tidying and cleaning, were clasped tightly behind her back, a silent testament to her practiced restraint. Mr. Alistair Finch, a man whose wealth was only surpassed by his arrogance, leaned back in his plush leather chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. His expensive suit, tailored to perfection, seemed to mock Anya's simple uniform, a stark visual representation of the chasm between them. A cluster of his equally well-heeled associates, all impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of casual superiority, chuckled softly, their eyes flicking between the powerful magnate and the silent, dignified Maid. They were here for the closing of a monumental international deal, a multi-million-dollar acquisition that hinged on the precise understanding of this very document, written in an obscure ancient dialect of Sanskrit. The air crackled, not just with the unspoken weight of the deal, but with the suffocating pressure of a deliberate public humiliation. Anya felt their eyes, hundreds of tiny needles pricking at her composure. The injustice burned, a familiar acrid taste, but her face remained impassive. She had learned long ago that true power did not always announce itself with a shout. Sometimes it merely waited and watched. Just that morning, the day had started like any other. The pre-dawn chill still clung to the air as Anya arrived at the sprawling Finch estate, the behemoth of a mansion sprawling across acres of manicured lawns. The dew on the grass still glistened, diamond-like, under the nascent sun. She moved through the empty, silent house with the practiced grace of a shadow, preparing breakfast, polishing silver, ensuring every surface reflected the immense wealth of her employers. Her worn, sensible shoes made no sound on the imported marble floors. Her uniform, fresh from the laundry, was a shield, a uniform of invisibility. She saw Mr. Finch briefly in the breakfast nook, already immersed in his tablet, barking orders into his headset. He spared her not even a glance, his gaze fixed on the glowing screen. "And ensure the study is absolutely spotless, Anya," he'd commanded, his voice devoid of any warmth. "My international partners arrive at 11, and they expect perfection." Anya had simply nodded, her expression unreadable. Perfection was her standard, regardless of the request. Later, as she meticulously dusted the countless ancient artifacts and leather-bound books in Finch's study, she'd overheard him on a frantic call. "The translator is stuck in customs? Impossible. This deal relies on precise interpretation. Find someone. Anyone." His voice had risen to a panicked crescendo. Anya had paused, a feather duster frozen mid-air, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. But she said nothing. She was just the maid, an invisible presence. She continued her dusting, her movements slow, deliberate, each gesture a silent act of observation. The irony was not lost on her, the frantic search for a solution when the answer stood, quiet and unacknowledged, just feet away. The clock in the hallway chimed 10 times. 1 hour until the meeting, 1 hour until the confrontation, 1 hour until a carefully constructed facade would begin to crumble. The meeting began promptly at 11 a.m. The international partners, two impeccably dressed men from an ancient, powerful Indian conglomerate, arrived with an air of quiet authority that subtly eclipsed Finch's bluster. Finch, sweating despite the chilled air conditioning, began his grandiose presentation, his voice booming with forced confidence. He gestured toward the thick, aged parchment on the table, the binding contract, written in a ceremonial form of Sanskrit. As you can see, gentlemen, everything is in order. Our terms are unambiguous. He flashed a triumphant smile, but it faltered as one of the partners, a man with shrewd, knowing eyes, gently cleared his throat. Mr. Finch, with all due respect, while the English translation is adequate, the nuances of the original text, particularly Clause 7 concerning ancestral land rights, are critical. Our previous translator was exceptional. We require absolute clarity. Finch's face paled. His translator, the one stuck in customs, was indeed exceptional. He had been specifically chosen for his expertise in this obscure dialect. The tension in the room became a palpable thing, a suffocating blanket. Finch stammered, his usual eloquence deserting him. Of course, gentlemen, absolutely. I've made arrangements for a specialist to arrive shortly. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. The minutes ticked by, each second a slow-motion descent into panic for Finch. His associates shifted uneasily, glancing at their watches. The deal, worth hundreds of millions, hung by a thread. Anya, moving silently around the periphery, refilling water glasses, clearing stray coffee cups, observed it all. Her face remained a mask of placid indifference, but her keen eyes missed nothing. The tightening of Finch's jaw, the subtle, almost imperceptible exchange of glances between the Indian partners, the nervous fidgeting of the lawyers. The stage was set, the players in place. The humiliation was about to begin. Well, Finch, it seems your specialist is taking his sweet time, one of the Indian partners remarked, a hint of steel in his voice. Perhaps we should reschedule. This is far too important to rush. Finch's composure snapped. He slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. No, absolutely not. We close this deal today. His eyes darted around the room, desperate, cornered. They landed on Anya, who was collecting empty sugar packets from a side table. A cruel, predatory gleam entered his eyes. "Anya!" he barked, his voice sharp and sudden. "Come here!" Anya approached, her steps unhurried, her expression unyielding. "Yes, Mr. Finch?" she asked, her voice soft, betraying no emotion. "You're from... where was it again?" "India, isn't it?" he sneered, already knowing the answer. "You understand these squiggly lines, don't you? You must have picked up something in your village." He picked up the ancient parchment, thrusting it towards her. "Translate this and you'll earn my paycheck, you useless waste of space." The silence that followed was deafening, a collective gasp from the room. The other associates looked away, uncomfortable, but none dared to intervene. The Indian partners watched with an intensity that was difficult to decipher. Was it shock? Disgust? Anya's eyes met Finch's, unwavering. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her. But it was not fear. It was the thrill of a long-awaited moment. She took the parchment, her fingers brushing against the ancient script, a language that was as familiar to her as her own breath. Finch laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Or is it too much for your limited education?" He didn't know. He truly had no idea who he was speaking to, what depths of knowledge lay hidden beneath the starch and polish of her uniform. Anya held the parchment. Her gaze, which moments ago had been placid, now sharpened almost imperceptibly, with a quiet intensity. She ran a thumb over the script, a tiny, almost private gesture. Finch, oblivious, continued to mock. Lost for words, eh? Just as I expected. Perhaps you're only fluent in cleaning supplies. His associates chuckled, a few of them bolder now, encouraged by Finch's display. The Indian partners, however, remained silent, their eyes fixed on Anya. A subtle shift occurred in the room, an almost imperceptible leaning forward in their expensive chairs. Anya took a deep breath, her chest expanding beneath the uniform. Her voice, when it came, was soft, clear, and perfectly articulated, each syllable a precisely placed stone in a sturdy wall of sound. With all due respect, Mr. Finch, she began, her tone measured, there are several layers of meaning here. The literal translation is straightforward, but the ceremonial dialect, combined with the specific regional proverbs embedded within Clause 7, requires a nuanced understanding of cultural and historical context. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the room. For instance, the term Dharani Putra, when rendered simply as son of the earth, misses the profound implication of ancestral duty, agricultural stewardship, and the spiritual connection to the land that is central to this agreement's true intent. She pointed to a specific passage, her finger tracing the ancient script with effortless precision. To translate it merely as land ownership would be a grave misrepresentation, potentially invalidating the entire clause by overlooking the sacred trust bestowed upon the custodians of the soil, a concept deeply rooted in the Atharva Veda. The room fell utterly silent. The smug smiles vanished. Finch's jaw hung slightly ajar. His associates stared, their faces a tableau of shock. The Indian partners, however, exchanged a look that was not surprise but dawning recognition, a glimmer of profound respect. The invisible maid was now the most visible person in the room. Eleanor continued, her voice gaining a subtle, quiet authority, not aggressive but undeniably commanding. She moved through the document with fluid ease, translating, interpreting, and explaining not just the words, but the historical and philosophical underpinnings of each clause. She spoke of ancient legal precedents, of regional customs that had shaped the language, of specific religious texts referenced implicitly within the contract. Her fluency was absolute, her understanding profound. She referenced specific Puranic verses to clarify a point on familial succession, then cited a forgotten 14th century commentary on land tenure law to elaborate on the inheritance rights mentioned. It was a masterclass in linguistic and cultural expertise, a dazzling display that left Finch and his associates utterly bewildered, then increasingly horrified. His face, which had been pale with anger, was now ashen with growing dread. The Indian partners, initially just respectful, were now openly amazed, their quiet, measured questions answered by Anya with an encyclopedic depth that even their own top-tier translators rarely possessed. She wasn't merely translating, she was illuminating, breathing life into a document that had seemed impenetrable. Finch tried to interrupt once, a sputtering attempt to regain control. "That's enough, Anya. You've made your point." But Anya didn't even glance at him. Her eyes were fixed on the parchment, on the intricacies of the language, her focus absolute. The Indian partners, with a subtle but unmistakable gesture, silenced Finch. This was a performance, a revelation, and they were not about to let him ruin it. Anya concluded her interpretation of the most contentious clauses, her voice finally softening. So, when Clause 7 is read with its full contextual weight, it implies not merely ownership, but a sacred guardianship, a responsibility that transcends generations. She looked up, her gaze once again sweeping the room, no longer simply a maid, but a scholar, an authority, a formidable presence. Finch, utterly defeated, slumped in his chair. The world he understood, where wealth dictated worth, was crumbling around him. The silence that followed Anya's meticulous translation was broken only by the faint whir of the air conditioning. Finch's face was a mask of utter humiliation, his eyes darting frantically between Anya and the now impressed, almost reverent faces of the Indian partners. One of the partners, the man with the shrewd eyes, finally spoke, his voice calm, but with an edge of quiet triumph. "Mrs. Sharma, your translation, it is not merely correct. It is exceptional. You have not only elucidated the text, but also revealed the very spirit of our ancestral traditions embedded within it." He stood, a rare gesture of profound respect, and extended his hand to Anya. "My deepest apologies for the unprofessional conduct you have endured today. Such a talent, such profound knowledge, should never be treated with such dismissive ignorance." Anya met his gaze, a hint of something akin to vindication in her own eyes. She took his hand, her touch firm and steady. Finch spluttered, trying to interject. "But she's just the maid." The other Indian partner, a younger man who had been silently recording the entire exchange on his phone, raised a warning eyebrow. "Indeed, Mr. Finch, and perhaps that is precisely your problem." He then turned to Anya. "Mrs. Sharma, our company has been seeking a head of international legal translation for precisely this dialect for over 2 years. The position offers a substantial salary, relocation, and benefits commensurate with your extraordinary expertise. Would you consider an interview?" The offer hung in the air, electric, a dramatic pendulum swing of fortune. Finch watched, his face twisting in a grotesque pantomime of disbelief and despair. His multi-million-dollar deal, his reputation, his carefully constructed world of dominance was disintegrating before his very eyes, dismantled by the woman he had just publicly shamed. The irony was exquisite. What happened next was a swift, systematic dismantling of Finch's arrogance. The younger Indian partner, without a word, sent the video of Finch's outburst and Anya's subsequent, brilliant translation to his company's legal team. Finch's associates, sensing the shift in power, quickly distanced themselves, their earlier chuckles now replaced by nervous whispers. The deal, which had been on the verge of collapse due to Finch's translator issue, was now salvaged, but not by Finch. It was salvaged by Anya. The Indian partners made it clear that while they would proceed, their future dealings would be directly with Anya, bypassing Finch entirely. Later that afternoon, Eleanor received a call from her agency, not with a complaint, but with an apology. The video had gone viral within their network, a testament to Finch's appalling behavior and Anya's astonishing composure and expertise. Word spread like wildfire. Social media, a relentless engine of justice, began to churn. The video, titled something sensational like "Millionaire mocks Maid, gets schooled in ancient Sanskrit," garnered millions of views. The image of Finch, smug and entitled, juxtaposed with Anya, calm and brilliant, became an instant emblem of hidden worth and class prejudice. The calls poured in for Anya, offers from prestigious law firms, international organizations, universities. She became an overnight sensation, a quiet icon of resilience and intellect. Finch's company stock plummeted. His reputation, once unassailable, was in tatters. His casual cruelty, caught on camera, became his undoing. It was a swift, public comeuppance, a brutal lesson in humility. The world, it seemed, was eager for stories of true worth finally being recognized, no matter how humble the packaging. Weeks turned into months. Anya Sharma was no longer the invisible maid. She was Dr. Anya Sharma, head of international legal translation for one of the largest conglomerates in the world. Her story was featured in prestigious publications. She gave interviews, always with a quiet dignity, advocating for the recognition of hidden talents and the dismantling of systemic biases. She never gloated, never indulged in bitterness. Her success was her revenge, her quiet power, her vindication. The Finch estate, once a symbol of opulence and cruelty, was eventually sold, its grandeur unable to mask the stench of its former owner's arrogance. Alastair Finch himself faded from the public eye. His wealth diminished, his power eroded, a cautionary tale of hubris. The very system that had allowed him to thrive on superficiality had, in the end, been turned against him by the force of undeniable talent. Anya, in her new life, never forgot where she came from. She established a foundation to support educational opportunities for women in rural villages, ensuring that no potential genius would ever be overlooked because of their background or perceived status. She understood that true worth was not about the clothes you wore or the size of your bank account, but the knowledge you carried, the dignity you possessed, and the quiet strength of your character. The transformation was complete, not just for Anya, but for those who witnessed her journey. It was a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, is often served in the most unexpected and satisfying ways. Anya now stood on a grand stage, addressing a rapt audience of international scholars and dignitaries. The spotlight, once harsh and unwelcome in Finch's study, now illuminated her with reverence. She spoke not of revenge, but of the quiet revolution of recognition, of the inherent dignity of every human being, regardless of their station. Her words, delivered with the same calm authority that had once disarmed Finch, resonated deeply. She recounted her story, not with bitterness, but with a profound sense of purpose. The uniform, she concluded, her voice soft but clear, does not define the individual. It is merely a garment. What lies beneath, the mind, the spirit, the inherent worth, that is what truly matters. A thunderous applause erupted, a cascade of sound that filled the grand hall. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. It was a smile of triumph, of peace, of profound satisfaction. Her journey from invisible maid to celebrated scholar was complete, a testament to the power of resilience and the undeniable force of true merit. What would you do if your worth was dismissed, your knowledge scorned? How would you react if you were publicly humiliated by someone who believed themselves superior? And what does it take for society to truly see beyond appearances and recognize the inherent brilliance in every individual? This was a real-life story of an underdog's vindication, a powerful narrative of justice served, and a transformative moment that reshaped not just one woman's life, but the perceptions of many. Remember this story. Share it. For every time worth is denied, a light is dimmed. For every time it is recognized, the world shines a little brighter.